Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy, Raysean from the Raysean Gadson Anime Podcast, or ORGAP for short. And on today's episode, we have a special guest. Eli Farmer, a professional voice actor who is known for Digimon Adventures, Our War Game, Digimon Adventures 2, Hurricane Touchdown, and Sasaki and Peeps. Join us as we dive into the world of voice acting, exploring Eli's personal journey and achievements, uncovering his anime origin story, and discussing our favorite Digimon. We'll also be sharing tips for anyone out there that's trying to get into voice acting. And also, doing something a little bit different than I have on a few of these other episodes where we have been talking to voice actors. We will also be having another co-host. Before I tell you who it is, sit back and enjoy the ride. Before we get started, I just want to allow my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves, basically tell everyone where you're from, what you do, and also tell us your favorite Digimonster and Digimon character. I'm going to go ahead and let my special guest go first, then my co-host.
All right, sounds good. Hey, everybody. My name is Eli Farmer. I'm a voice actor. I currently reside in Texas, but I am from Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's why I have a little bit of a dude bro voice. If you listen in closely, you can hear it some. But yeah, I grew up near the water, and then I moved down to Texas back in 2017. If you know me from any roles, then you probably know me as the voice of Joe Keto in Digimon. Unless you're Canadian, then you might know me as the voice of the Bank of Montreal, or BMO for short. But yeah, so I'm excited to be here. And as far as my favorite Digimon goes, I'm gonna go Doru Goromon, mega level of Dorumon for any of the Digimon fans out there. And then for my favorite character in the show, oh gosh, I feel like it's blasphemous for me to not say Joe, right? Is that if I say anyone else? But if I'm being honest and truthful to myself, it's probably gonna be Takato from the third season of Digimon. I would say is my favorite character.
Let my co-host go now.
This is Josh from Dad's Anime Stash. You guys probably know me from Raysean's podcast. You surely don't listen to mine. Yeah. I'm a big Digimon fan, and as far as my favorite Digimon, it just depends on if you're going to try to bust me on technicalities or not, because it's got to be Black War Greymon, even though technically he's not a Digimon. But I do have this model of Black War Greymon right here that I built. That took me forever.
Excellent.
Okay, that's pretty dope. Well, you guys know that I'm just recently getting into Digimon, so it took me a while to kind of figure out what my favorite Digimon was, and actually my favorite character. If I had to choose based on the amount of episodes I've watched so far, I have to say my favorite character is probably Matt. He has that cool vibe around him. I like the fact that he's an older brother. And I think in this situation, I would want to be with my brother versus my friends, because I feel like in this situation, if I got into an argument with my friends, that might just be the whole thing, you know what I mean? Like, but if it's with my brother, I feel like we'll be able to kind of squash it, be able to get back on the right track. If I had to say Digimon, I wrote down Hawkmon because I like I think it's pretty cool. It kind of gives the same feel of Pidgeotto from Pokemon, but also gives you that bald eagle type of feel from it. And I also like creatures that can may be able to give you flight. I don't know what he evolves to, if you can get on his back and give him flight, but that's just the idea that I have. It's like, I would love to have something that can help me fly around the whole Digi Island type of thing.
Okay. You just wait. You're in for a treat.
Oh, man, I can't wait.
Complicated when you get into the armor digivolving and all that.
Man, I've already just got into the, we just met Devilmon, which I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. Well, that's I think the first real villainous character I've ran into.
He's a bad dude.
The first big bad.
Making fake food and stuff.
Oh, man, that was crazy. But before we get into today's episode, I just want to kind of ask you what you've been watching lately, because there's been a lot of new anime and manga out. But if you haven't been watching any anime or manga, what else have you been doing?
Okay, so me and my fiance, we are definitely still in the anime watching phase. I don't think we'll ever grow out of that. But lately, what we've been watching, since the beginning of the series, I've been a huge fan of My Hero Academia. So I've been watching the 7th season. I just watched the season finale, and oh man, I'm so stoked. It's been so great. I've really enjoyed it this season. We've been watching Dandadan as well, which is like kind of a new big anime of the season. It's got the potentials to be, one of the big heavy hitters. And then outside of that, I'm trying to think if we've been watching anything else really. Really just those two, and then anything else that I'm watching, I can't really share because I'm probably watching it for research.
I feel you. Have you been have you been watching Blue Lock?
Okay. I have. I'm not really a huge sports anime person.
Okay.
I think it's because I was a former athlete myself, and so like it just doesn't grab me the same way.
I feel you on that one. Only reason why I ask because most of the time when I bring on voice actors in, that seems to be their favorite anime, and I just wanted to kind of see how you thought about the animation that they've been doing this last season. They need to really catch that up because I'm kind of heartbroken on that. Like,
I haven't watched, but I have seen some of the criticism about the animation being a little stilted and very like there's just scenes of seconds going by where no one's actually moving. It's almost like old school Speed Racer days.
Yeah. 2 frames per second.
And I'm sitting here like, how can y'all do this on an anticipated anime? Like, people been waiting for this anime all year. Y'all just gonna give us this? But I
only got so much money, Raysean. Animation seems like it costs a lot.
Well, yeah. A lot of anime are starting to cut their episodes down. Like, we can't try to make 100 good episodes of a season. We gotta get this down to 25 to 30 or something.
Or 12. God, some of them.
Yeah. Everybody can't do what Demon Slayer been doing. They got the right fucking mind frame to do what they're doing. But what I've been watching recently, since I just talked about Demon Slayer, I just finished up the last few episodes of Demon Slayer, and man, that I can't wait for the next season of Demon Slayer because Muzan is crazy. The fact he just rolling up on them at the end of the thing. But I do like the main guy. I cannot think of his name. The main guy for the Demon Slayers and how he kind of just blew the whole thing up at the end. That took some props right there and some courage. And low key scared the shit out of Muzan because he was like, "What the fuck? I didn't know he was this crazy. Gonna blow up you and your whole family." Like, dang. But just like you said with My Hero, I just recently watched the final episode of that, and I recently talked to the voice actor who did All for One in that last scene just a week ago.
Okay.
So that was pretty dope to kind of see all that come together and stuff like that. I want to give him his props. That was pretty dope. I was actually surprised. Well, what about you, Josh? What you been doing recently?
I've been watching this it's this anime not a lot of people have heard about it. It's called Dragon Ball Daima.
Oh,
so that's
small show.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it's like a niche thing, but it's worth checking out. I mean, if you've been watching Dragon Ball
indie projects.
So I've been watching that, and then I am very far behind on My Hero Academia. I have not watched anything this season, but that's how I like to do it. I like to just watch it all at once because I tend to forget things. And then aside from that, I've been watching Frasier, as always.
Classic.
Well, no, there's a new series.
Oh, whoa.
You didn't know
out of the loop?
You're super out of the loop, man. The Frasier loop, at least.
I need to get on that. I haven't even watched the first iteration of Frasier, so I need to kind of
that's a big commitment.
See what's going on. Is it?
It's a lot of
11
episodes.
Seasons.
Ooh, okay.
It has about the same amount of episodes as Dragon Ball Z.
All right, I'm gonna give it my 3 episodes. If it catch me, then I keep it going. If it don't catch me in 3 episodes, then I let it go. I gave it a shot.
That's really generous of you. I only give it 2 episodes.
I try to give it.
Show doesn't catch me in 2, I give up.
Because I usually feel like the intro take about 2 episodes. Then that's when the stuff start to jump. But I'll say for Digimon, it took about 6-7 episodes.
Yeah.
It really depends on where you think the plot really start moving. But I think it start moving when the Devilmon comes. So it's
okay.
But all right, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the interview. For my first question, I wanted to ask you, what drew you into the career in voice acting? And did you have any concerns or doubts when you first started?
Oh, that's a good opener. Okay, so what drew me in? So I had kind of always been interested in anime and video games and all things, the Toonami block, anything that was a kid that grew up in the early 2000s, late 90s. Like I'm a product of that era. And so I think that for me, because it was almost being force fed to us in a way, it was almost hard to avoid. But I was so receptive to it and I loved every second of it. I always wanted to be involved in that industry in some way, I think a little bit in the back of my mind, but I never saw myself as an artist or someone who had any kind of like performing ability. So I never thought of myself as being an actor. I couldn't draw, I couldn't sing, but I was like, maybe I can work in marketing or something. But as I grew older, eventually that idea, it sort of blossomed into something where I was like, maybe I could be a voice actor. Maybe this is something that I could do. So I want to say I was probably 20 or so at the time when I started sort of looking into it, like what exactly do voice actors do? Who are these people? What are their careers like? What's the day to day? And so I started to just, again, very lightly dabble in it, but I hadn't made like the full commitment. And then about a year later, I moved, or actually maybe a year and a half. Yeah. I moved from North Carolina down to Texas. So I went to school in North Carolina. I got my degree at Appalachian State University, studying exercise science, totally unrelated, different career path. And then I ended up down in Texas after I realized that, like, hey, being a collegiate strength conditioning coach, like that's a cool idea, but not necessarily a ton of job security in that field. Because I saw firsthand as a Division I athlete, if the team loses a big game or the school loses or has a losing season, a lot of times heads have to roll, and the people that get fired are the strength and conditioning coaches. And so I was like, oh, well, I should probably find a backup plan in case I find myself in that position. Again, that's where the voice acting thing sort of came back to the forefront. And then I moved down to Texas, not pursuing voice acting. I just always wanted to live in Texas because I was born here in 94. Yeah, so I was born here, and then we moved when I was about 4 or 5 years old. We moved up to Virginia because I have two Navy parents. So moved around, decent bit in the early goings there. But anyway, so I always told my mom when I grew up, I was like, I want to move back to Texas. And this was the perfect opportunity to do it. I needed a reset, found myself down in Texas, and I was working at a university at the time, University of Texas at Dallas, totally unrelated, not working in athletics. I wasn't working in entertainment, just working at the university. And one day I discovered that Funimation was 45 minutes down the road from where I worked. And I was like, whoa, I wonder if they do tours. And so I shot over an email and I was like, hey, do y'all do tours of the facility? And they got back to me and they're like, normally no, but every so often we do small groups. And I actually have a space on one of them. So I'll be more than willing to put you on the small tour group. So I was like, holy crap, whoa, that's awesome. And so then I remember the day came and I showed up at Funimation and I was like so excited. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was just me with my backpack. And then it was like, I want to say maybe 4 other people in our group. And so they took us around the facility. We got to see all of the different sort of production side and merchandise side. And of course the dubbing and the animation side. Well, not animation, but the dubbing side. And we got to meet the president of Funimation at the time, Gen Fukunaga, who's ultimately the one who sold the company to Sony, and then they merged into become the mega Goliath that is Crunchyroll now. But anyway, so we went through this tour of the facility, and as we were walking through, I saw Danny Chambers, actually, was the actor who was performing at the time. I can't remember what show that she was working on, but we got to watch her dub a scene, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then we went to an empty studio and they're like, hey, does anyone want to kind of just take pictures inside the booth? And I was like, oh yeah, this is so neat. So I'm taking pictures and I was like, I need to do this. I need to be here. I need this to be what I do for my life. I don't know how, but I need to figure out how to do it. So then I ran home and I was like, okay, how to be a voice actor, did the typical Googling thing. And the information was kind of, not really the most definitive. Because there's no right or wrong way. Well, there's a wrong way. I should say there's no one right way to become a voice actor. There's a wrong way for sure, but there's no one right way to become a voice actor. Because if you talked, well, I'm sure you've spoken to dozens of people and they all have different stories of how they arrived at this point. And so I put it out there. There was a Facebook group. It was the Dallas Voice Actors Meetup group. It doesn't exist anymore, but at the time I caught out sort of the tail end and they were actually just kind of closing up shop. And the person who was running the group, his name was Cliff Zellman. And I remember I posted in the group, I was like, hey guys, I'm trying to be a voice actor. Where do I get a demo made? And Cliff was like, hey, before I answer your question, do you have any acting experience, any dubbing experience? And I was like, nope, none whatsoever. And he was like, okay, let me basically save you from yourself. You were jumping 10 steps ahead. Let's just backpedal a little bit. So Cliff took me out to lunch and was like, hey, I know you're really enthusiastic about this. I know you want to jump into this field, but just know that if this is something you seriously want to do, you got to get your skills up, man. You gotta go have some professional training. You need to get with a coach. You need to have a professional demo. He's like, because you are entering a skill level that is so far beyond hobbyist. It's not just something you can just be like, oh, I think I'm going to be a voice actor with no training whatsoever, and then go on and do it. He's like, the voice actors that you grew up hearing on TV, the voice actors that you're fans of in video games, those are the exact people that you're going to be competing against when you start auditioning. He's like, so that's where you need to get your skills up to be if you actually want this to be a viable career. And I was like, whoa. So I took that charge very seriously, and I buckled down, and I studied the art form of just voice acting. And, voice acting is acting, but specifically the voiceover component. I studied every little nook and cranny and nuance. And for 2 years, that's all I did was just study. And then I got my first demo made in 2020, shopped it around to a few agencies. I got picked up by my first agent, and that was a good learning experience for me. I didn't do a ton of book. Actually, I didn't book anything with that first agent, but I had auditioned a lot. And then the experience I gained from that led me into my second agent, who I'm still with now. And we have a wonderful relationship, and I booked quite a bit with my second agent. And my career has expanded and all of these things. And that's why I enjoy the success that I have now, because I feel like I did it the right way. I took my time, I got the training, I followed the steps, and I didn't just sort of jump in without a plan. Well, initially I did, but I got course corrected to have a plan. And as far as like fears and hesitations, I think the only thing that I was maybe afraid of was if I could actually act. Because in my first training session, I remember my coach, Dave, was like, he had me read a line. So we worked on some scripts together, and I did a line read for him. And I remember he paused and he was like, "Your talent is raw," which is a very nice way of being like,
that's so nice.
Really bad. And I think that's why I was able to get so good, because Dave was always honest with me about like where I was and where my skills were. So I think that was maybe the only time where I had any hesitancy of like, oh man, can I actually do this? But I ended up proving myself wrong. Any of the doubts that I had, I dismissed those and worked through those and arrived at the place that I am now. So yeah, that's the story.
Cool. I like the part where you said you call Funimation before you went down there, because at my job we have a lot of people that just like to come there and be like, "Can I fill out an application?" And I'm like, "Hold up, that's not the steps. You can't do that." So
Yeah, online first.
Raysean works for the FBI.
Oh, okay.
No, I work for a pharmaceutical company, and I'm a security guard, and you will be surprised how many people come there every day trying to just, I'm here for HR. No, you need to fill out an application, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's not like the old days. You just wait in the parking lot, right? Try to catch the CEO. Can I have an opportunity, please?
All right, so this interview, Josh, we're going to be going back and forth giving you questions. So I'm going to let Josh go ahead.
I want to say real quick, you were talking about how when you were meeting up with people, they were telling you, hey, all those voice actors you liked as kids, you're going to be going up against them. It's funny because I was playing the new Dragon Ball Z game, Sparkling Zero, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw shade at any of my favorite voice actors, but like it was, Chris Sabat and Sean Schemmel, and James Marsters was playing Zamasu, and I was like, man, there's such a difference in the level of acting between these two. Because like James Marsters, he was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He played Piccolo in the movie. He's a trained actor. I don't know about the other two, but like there's like a subtlety to his performance versus those other two.
Yeah, it's a different way of approaching it for sure.
But I just wanted to insult two of my favorite voice actors.
Coming out swinging.
Yeah, that way if they ever talk, think about being on the show, they can listen to this. And
they can reference this clip.
Oh, Josh guy, I don't know.
Yeah, Raysean's like, I don't know him. A picture of us.
No association, no affiliation.
So, what do you find most challenging about being a voice actor?
Ooh, I think that's something that's definitely been fluid. It changes from year to year. When I first started, like after I got my demo and I was like, I'm a pro and I have an agent. I think the thing that I found the hardest was opportunities. Like, man, I feel like I'm not getting enough auditions. I want more auditions. I want more auditions. And then eventually that turns into, oh man, I have so many auditions. This is a lot of auditions. I feel like I can't give my time adequately to all of these auditions. I actually wish I had a few less auditions. And then it transitions to, oh gosh, I need to make more money. I feel like I'm not making enough money. I'm not booking enough. My booking rate is too low. If I don't book enough, we're going to not make enough for rent and groceries and all of these things. And then that transitions to, okay, I'm getting a good amount of auditions and I'm booking at a decent rate. Well, I don't want to just be the side character. I want to be the main character. Or I want to play this role. I haven't got to play this role. And that's a very dangerous place I think actors find themselves at times. And we're all going to have that moment. But I encourage anyone that's listening, any of my fellow peers out there, if you catch yourself in that moment, just take stock of where you started and where you are now. Like if you're at the place where you're like, I'm booking, I've got auditions coming in, but I'm not necessarily getting the roles that I want. There was a point in time where you would have given your left arm to even have the opportunity to audition for a role. And now you're like, oh man, I don't like this role that I have. So take a moment, reassess, and try to lead with gratitude. And I think the place that I'm at right now is the hardest part of my job is balance. Giving enough to my relationship, my fiance, giving enough to every single one of the auditions that I have, giving enough to what started as of recent, like fan engagement and those opportunities, giving enough to my own physical well-being. Like I said, I was a college athlete. I have a degree in exercise science. Physical fitness is important to me. And when you're commuting back and forth for work and you're driving to this studio and that studio, you're not really eating the best. You ain't got time to work out, and so these sorts of things, they can kind of get away from you. So I think now I would say the hardest challenge is just balancing all of the spinning plates that I've got going.
True. I mean, that's true about even my life, trying to get a nice balance of everything, trying to be able to go to work and then come back and still be able to do family stuff and then still be able to do podcasting 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. So it could sometimes be like, dang, I just need a break. Let me just when we call off a little bit, when we do something, but man,
a couple extra sick days.
And then right now I'm with you with the trying to work out, because majority of my job is just like sitting down and just watching the computer. So I'm like, I need to spend more time actually going to the gym, because at least my last job I was standing up all the time. So at least that was doing something, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now I'm just literally like sitting down the whole time.
I got to keep that 6-pack.
Or just my shape. Man, what about you, Josh?
What was it?
Oh, balance.
I mean, you can't have it all. Sometimes you gotta miss out a little bit. Like my wife is in labor right now, but I came to do this instead. So
what?
You gotta make choices. No, that's a joke.
That would be nuts.
Oh man, I'd give you your props. That's commitment right there.
My wife was in labor though. She was doing it for like 3 days, so I did go home and play Borderlands for a while.
You just let me know when you're ready. Like then,
someone had to feed the dogs.
Yeah. Carrying the team.
For my third question, I want to ask you, what has been your favorite project to work on in the Digimon universe? Did you expect it to become so popular? And do you feel a connection to the character you played?
Oh, okay. Multi-layered. This is very deep question. So I would say that my favorite project, well, I've worked on the one, which is Digimon the movies, which will be out December 17th. But within that, there are 3 movies within that collection. And so my favorite movie, I would say, for me to work on was probably Hurricane Touchdown, which is the 3rd movie in the series. And I think the reason why that was my favorite movie was because in the original Digimon the movie that we got here stateside, for those of you who may not know, it was 3 films. They cut it down and made it into 1 feature-length film because they
took
didn't
3
think
movies
that,
and make 1 movie?
Yeah, so they turned 3 movies into 1 movie, and they created this new storyline. So it's a totally different sort of story than I shouldn't say totally different. It's like they took bits and pieces of it and then they made up an overarching narrative. So the overarching narrative is the part that's manufactured, but the actual details within that part is true to the Japanese. And so we got that movie here stateside. And I think for me, the really cool part about working on Hurricane Touchdown is because that's the movie that got cut up the most out of the original 3. So Hurricane Touchdown, I think, what is it, like something like 30 whole minutes of that movie got cut to be packaged into Digimon the movie. And so that's a lot of content and new stuff that's never been heard in English that we got the opportunity to dub, which was really cool. So stepping into this role, this is a role that is so special to me. And it's a very unique opportunity that I don't think a lot of actors will get in their career. in that it is a role that, yes, I auditioned for with my merits and my talent and my ability, and I booked this role, but it's also a role that I inherited. This is a role that Michael Lindsay created. This is a role that, well, obviously there's a Japanese actor before him, but what American audiences know as Joe, he created that performance, right? And so I'm stepping into his legacy, and, I take serious care of everything that I work on. I give everything my 100%, but there's a different level of responsibility as opposed to when you're taking care of something for yourself as when you're doing it for someone else. Like if you're driving your car, like, yeah, of course you're going to be careful and safe and all of that stuff. But if you're borrowing your buddy's car, oh man, you're like checking the mirrors, you're doing the whole nine, you're like braking extra slow because it's not yours. Like this is something that belongs to someone else or belong to someone else. And so you take that extra level of care. And so that's how I feel about this role with Joe. So I do feel that connection. I do feel that additional sense of responsibility, and just getting to like play in a space again in that third movie, Hurricane Touchdown, that Michael Lindsay didn't even get to play in. Like that's a great honor. And so I think that's probably why that's my favorite, because I got to say lines that the first time that audiences will ever hear Joe say those lines, it'll be from Eli. And that to me is like very special. That's going to be the first time that anyone ever hears this performance. It'll be me, those specific lines. And so that'll be the one time I think maybe that I won't be compared to my predecessor, which I have no problems with, compare away, because I've done everything in my power to try to make the transition as seamless as possible. I want to make sure that when folks are watching the film, that even if there's a little bit of it's like, that's not exactly the same, I want you to just be like, yeah, that's Joe. That's what I remember Joe being like. Joe was like that. Yeah. Because I think for me, worst case scenario is for someone to watch the films and be like, that doesn't really feel like Joe. I'd be like, knife in the heart. I failed my mission. So yeah. And as far as, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. So it was, do I feel any, do I relate to the character of Joe? So I do. And I think the more time that I spent researching Joe and the more time I sort of reflected on my childhood after booking the role, I kind of had to have that conversation with myself. I was like, yeah, you're a lot more like Joe than maybe you want to admit. Because when you're a kid, you're like, yeah, I'm like Matt, like I'm cool. Or like, you're like, I'm like Ty, I'm brave. You think you're one of the front men. Nobody as a kid's like, yeah, like I'm Joe, I'm the nervous kind of like not nerdy, super confident one. I'm the worrywart, but that's true to who I am. I actually am sort of kind of a worrywart. Like I do have anxiety about certain things. I do find myself overthinking and fixating on things. Like I'm not to the extent that Joe is, but there's definitely some relation there. And I think thinking about Joe's journey from being this very like scared of his own shadow type of kid to turning into really this very reliable individual that we see in the second season of Digimon, and then going on into Digimon Adventure Tri, like Joe really becomes this like almost sort of solid rock. He's far more unshakable in his later years. And I think I went through that transition in my own life as a kid. I was very shy. I was very introverted. I was very afraid. And I think that as I got older, wrestling and physical fitness and like just becoming someone who was bigger and stronger and had the ability to defend themselves, I wasn't as nervous in the world, and I could walk through the environments that I entered with a true, authentic confidence, because I was like, yeah, I can stand on my own 2 feet and I know that I can defend myself. Not that we live in some war-torn world where you're like fighting for scraps of meat or anything, but it's just, there's a level of confidence that comes with any kind of martial art or self-defense or combat sports. So yeah, I would say that's how I relate to Joe, is that transition from not so confident to being more confident later in life.
Okay, I feel that. Well, you guys know I just kind of recently just started Digimon, so kind of just meeting the characters in their original point. I just want to say, yeah, Joe, at first I didn't like Joe because I was like, oh, he's just too worrisome. And like if you get an isekai somewhere, that person right there, I could tell would be annoying. But when you start to think about some of the stuff that he be annoying about, it'd be like, yeah, y'all do need to figure out where y'all gonna get some water. Maybe y'all shouldn't just be walking all around the place without knowing where y'all going. You know what I mean? So like he do have some good things that he is saying. I just feel like he just be like, oh my God, just okay, we know. But at the end of the day, we still stuck here. Like, you know what I mean? So
He's
that's
the voice of
basically.
reason.
And then I also like the his Digimon. That's what I can't think of his name, but I like him in the seal form.
Yeah.
I love their how they work together. How one is the warrior word and the other one is more funny and not as caring and easygoing. And then you just got Joe who's like, oh, just so worrisome and everything. It's just hilarious.
It's
And then
a
I
great
like
buddy cop.
Yeah.
I like it. True. But what about you, Josh?
It's funny you brought up, like, what do? Do you try to emulate the old voice or do you do your own there? It's like, it's got to be a tough decision because I'll be honest with you. I love Johnny Young Bosch, but it still bugs me to hear him play TK. He's not TK to me.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. There's definitely, I think, a component, like you get so used to Doug Erholtz, as his TK. And it's funny now because you can even go online and you can see Doug at cons and he does the TK voice and he still absolutely sounds like he did in 02. So you kind of scratch your head sometimes like, why did they recast him? But, there's things that happen behind the scenes.
He was in Try, though. Like, it makes no sense to me. He played the new guy in Try.
Yeah, he's playing a different character. But you never know what's going on behind the scenes, or at least I certainly don't know. And I think of it as like one of the beautiful parts about acting is as much as, we might get attached to a particular performance, it's nice to have that variety. And I think that sometimes we get stuck in this mode where when it's like a more modern character, we're like, oh, that can only be played by this one person. But then, you think about something like Romeo and Juliet. How many people have been Romeo throughout the course of history? No one would be like, there's only one Romeo. No one else can ever play the role of Romeo. And so I think that as roles, they go on with time and they have more longevity, I think we become more open to the idea of different interpretations of them. And so I think that, yeah, it's a little maybe just too fresh to be like, like that's supposed to be what TK is. But, maybe another 10, 15 years, you'd be more open to the idea of a different TK. And I think that's one of the things that was really great about Digimon Adventure 2020 was that they had an entirely different cast. And so you got to hear, oh, hey, what would an alternate universe version of these characters sound like? And you got to sort of peer into that world. So there's pros and cons, growing pains for sure. I definitely get that. There's characters, from my childhood that I'm like, this is how they should sound. They shouldn't have different voices. No. But, it's part of the game. Growth and change.
I'm not going to go, dude. I'm still bitter about Linda Young not being Frieza anymore. So that's how it is.
Line in the sand, dig the feet in the mud.
I give you props on it, especially when you're so used to hearing a certain voice and then when it does change and you can notice that change, because that's the big thing, especially when you can notice the change. Then it'd be like, they got a sore throat or is this a different...
They take the week off. What's going on? Sometimes that does happen. Sometimes they're actually sick and they have to have another actor fill in for them for the week.
For a voice match?
Yeah.
All right. For my next question, I want to ask you, do you think there's any misconceptions about voice acting?
Oh, how long do we have? I think there's so many misconceptions about voice acting. I think one of the big ones is that we have more power than we actually do. I think that people think that we have some say in like how the direction of the story goes, or people think that we have like this tremendous say over how lines are delivered or which takes are used in the final product. Because I can tell you all the time, there's been multiple times where I'll do 2-3 takes of a line. They don't tell me, hey, we're going to use A, B, or C. They're just like, great, thank you for the takes. And that's the end of the session. And so you don't know until you see the finished product which one of those takes that they used. And you might listen to it and be like, oh, man, they picked C. Like, I would have picked B, but it's like.
I thought I was joking around.
Yeah, you don't get to say, you just kind of roll with the punches, and that's the name of the game. So I think that's the big misconception is like we do not have nearly as much power or influence as I think fans might think that we do. And I think the reason for that is because we're so front facing. When you think of characters and brands, like you think of, oh, who's the voice of this? No one ever thinks like, hey, who's the director of that show? As maybe a Turbo fan might think that, but the average viewer isn't like, who was the script writer for that? Like, who wrote that line? Or who was the producer of this? Who oversaw that? They're like, no, who's the voice of the character? They are the be-all, end-all. They have all the power and all the decision-making. And if I don't like something that happened in the episode, it's clearly their fault. and I'm gonna follow them to their place of work and harass them about it. Like I think that's how the like spiral into chaos happens sometimes. And it's just like, hey,
to you guys than them, you know what I mean?
yeah. So, it's pros and cons, right? Like we're the ones that are out on the front line. And so I think that, a lot of times when there's something negative, it's going to come to our doorstep first. But the other side of that is on the positive. A lot of times we get credit for things that we actually didn't even do. They'll be like, oh my gosh, dude, you sounded so amazing, like in this one thing. And you're like, that was a voice filter that the audio engineer put on to make me sound like all robotic. Like I didn't just do that with my voice, Now, granted, there's some things that we can modulate, but if you hear me over like an intercom speaker in an episode of a show, like I can't just make my voice sound like I'm talking through an intercom. Like, there's lots of people that are playing roles in this process that never get any thanks. They never get any credit. They don't get invited to conventions. People aren't asking them for autographs. People aren't sending them emails like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. You changed my life. And meanwhile, you might not know that like the reason why you love that show is because there was a really talented script adapter who converted from Japanese to English and made these really amazing jokes and things that you're just like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Ha ha ha. I'm belly laughing. You're just thinking about the actor that delivered that line, not knowing that they were just more or less the last step in that process. And so I would say the other misconception is probably this is people getting into the industry. I think a lot of times I hear from folks like, I want to do voice acting like on the side to just make some extra money. And I'm like, oh, you're trying to make some extra money. You can do literally anything else because we do not make a ton of money. I think that folks think that because anime is like $1 billion industry, right? They're like, oh man, y'all got to be raking in the dough. And it's like, that is so not what is happening. Even in, video games, like you think Grand Theft Auto made billions upon billions of dollars. And it's not like those actors can just like ride off into the sunset and retire now because they worked on Grand Theft Auto. I mean, video games as a whole, they don't have residuals. You would think that they would, but they don't. And so the finances, I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I said that was crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So no residuals for video games. So the finance component of it, I think, is another big misconception as well. And then I would say probably the third misconception is that I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. There's lots of them, but the third one that's like popped into my head, it's got to do with like familiarity. I think that some folks, and this is more so talking to voice actors as a whole, this is something that I myself have had to come to terms with as I've gotten further into the industry. There's going to be people that you're fans of, that you've been fans of since you were a kid. And if you're fortunate enough to be like me, you get to work next to your idols some days. And so you get to meet them. And so for you, it's like the biggest, most exciting day of your life, but you have to remember you're at work. And so it's the most exciting day ever for you, but for them, it's just another day of work. And so you might see someone walking down the hallway and be like, holy crap, it's the voice of this character. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you. I'm da-da-da-da-da-da. And they're
it's
like,
too early for this.
Yeah, they're like, yeah.
I'm going to the
man.
bathroom.
Really appreciate it. Like, I'm just trying to like go to work, So I would say that's the other misconception is I think people sometimes think that they're going to get on the other side. And there's like this giant red carpet welcome wagon where like now you're just going to be buddy with all your like favorite voice actors. It's like, no, you still have to make those individual relationships one at a time. And not everyone is necessarily open and receptive to being friends with, their peers and fellow coworkers. Not that they're antagonistic, but it's just like, I think that sometimes a lot of times we start off as fans. So, we meet someone on the convention side getting an autograph and we're like, wow, they were so cool to meet as a fan. And then you get on the other side of the table and you think like, oh, all right, they're going to give me that same like time and energy. And it's like, well, I think we give a little bit more to the fans than we might, our coworkers. So they're not going to give you that same like song and dance that they might give you, if you were to meet them asking for an autograph sort of deal. Not to say that people aren't approachable. It's just like that familiarity component. I think I see some actors get tripped up on. They'll come into Crunchyroll for a session and they'll be sitting in a green room and, you'll see people walking through the hallway and it's like, whoa, this is kind of like Avengers Tower, right? Like these are the big dogs. Like these are some of the best in our industry. And folks just get so starry-eyed and think that they can just run up to them. And it's not necessarily like that. So I would say that's probably the third one for anyone that's entering and manages to get to the other side. Just be wary of that. Don't come on too strong. Play it cool.
That's funny because how my anxiety is, I don't even know if I would be able to run up to him because in my head I'll just be like,
He doesn't
they
want to talk
don't
to me.
they don't care about me at all. Oh man, that's exactly how I would feel. Unless they just started talking to me type thing. But yeah,
And
I can
sometimes
see
that
how that can
happens.
be a problem.
Yeah, I've had the opposite where, I try to play it cool. And I'm like sitting next to someone. I'm like, all right, play cool, play cool, play cool. And they're like, hey man, like, what's going on? You're like, whoa, you wanna talk to me? You're so cool. Like, you're the star. Like, you do all these things. And they're like, yep, but I'm still just a regular friendly person. Not to
Don't
say
lie.
that people who don't, not to say that people who don't engage aren't friendly. It's just that you got to meet people where they're at and be respectful of boundaries.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, let me ask you something. And Raysean, you can cut this part out if he's not allowed to talk about. Hey, in the new Digimon movie, are they still going to have that Angela Anaconda short?
I think Discotech has come out with a statement and said that, no, it's not going to be in the film. And the
What?
reason...
Why did they make it?
Yeah, I know, right? Waste of everyone's time. The reason they actually went a little bit more in depth with this, Mark, one of the guys over at Discotech, he talked about it on the podcast. He runs a website. It's called With the Will. It's like a Digimon forum. They also have a Twitter account. They break a lot of Digimon news. But anyway, he went into a little bit more in depth on the podcast. And the reason that they're not going to have it in there, because they had gone back and forth like, okay, if we acquire this short, like, are we going to put it as a bonus? Or are we going to put it like in front of the movie like it was? The reason why it's not is because whoever owned the rights to Angela Conda, like no one knows who owns it. So they can't even like go approach someone to be like, we want to get the rights to this thing to put on the DVD or put on the Blu-ray disc because no one even knows who owns it anymore. So it's just like a thing that's like lost. So even if they wanted to do it, they're like,
is it
we
like
want
French
this on
or French
the disc.
Canadian? I don't even remember.
Yeah. So even if they're like, we want this on the disc, they literally do not know who to contact to ask about it.
I bet you as soon as y'all put it on the disc, whoever owns it gonna come out. Y'all gonna figure out who owns it.
Just put it on there and hope you don't get sued. That's how I use the internet.
Yeah, roll the dice.
All right, man. So you played in that anime Sasaki and Peeps, which I definitely have watched. How was that experience? And were you a fan of the isekai before playing in it? And did you have any favorite moments?
Okay, all right. So Sasaki and Peeps. I was not, I'll be honest, I wasn't a fan of the series before I got booked in the role. I had never heard of the series before I got booked in the role. But it was a series that I was like, whoa, this is like, I'm engaged. I'm locked in. I play a character. His name is Mark. And that was actually one of the more unique experiences that I've ever had booking a role because I didn't audition for it. I didn't know that happened. Like I had heard stories about like directors just being like, oh, we want you for this thing. And bringing you in. But I was like, surely that'll never happen to me. But yeah, I just got an email and they were like, they'd like to cast you as Mark in Sasaki and Peeps. And I was like, no freaking way. I don't have to audition. Like I just get the job. Now, a little more in depth to that is we are constantly auditioning for things at Crunchyroll. And so you might be auditioning for like a totally different show, totally different project, and you don't know who's listening. So it could literally just be someone is just in the room at the time while another director is going through auditions. And I'd be like, whoa, I like whatever that guy's doing. And that could be how you get a job. Like you just never know. Because the directors at Funimation have a lot of power in terms of how they cast. They have a lot of autonomy in that way. And so, yeah, I tell folks when you're coming in, just remember like you're working, but you're also always auditioning. Even if you're coming in to do background bits and all you're doing is just getting stabbed in the neck as Soldier Z, on the latest episode of whatever show, the director in that session might be like, I really like their energy. I liked working with them. I'm going to cast them as a character in my show. Like you just don't know. So just keep that in mind for folks that are coming in as first timers or just getting started. But as far as like favorite scenes, this is kind of like, I guess, a meta reference. For anyone who knows, there's a movie. It's a terrible movie. It's called The Room. Have y'all heard of this film?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a scene where they're on the roof and he goes, "Oh, hi, Mark." Like we actually managed to sneak that. Yeah, we managed to sneak that line into an episode of Sasaki and Peeps because my character's name is Mark. And so Sasaki walks up and he's like, "Oh, hey, Mark." And so I just thought that was really funny for anyone that managed to catch that like really obscure reference. So I would say that's probably one of my favorite parts of that. And I think that I also just enjoyed, I think I also really enjoyed just the recording schedule of that because that was the first time I'd ever done a simuldub. So I was at Crunchyroll every single week. I'd never had that experience of going in weekly. And I was like, wow, I really feel like I'm part of the team. Like, I feel like I'm really part of the crew, because prior to that, it was just a lot of sporadic getting called in every now and again for background bits. And so, yeah, the whole experience of Sasaki and Peeps was fantastic. And I look forward to season 2.
For sure. I like the whole element of them having like an older guy being the person that gets isekai and like that. 'Cause we've been getting a lot of anime like that, like Kaiju number 8. You get an older guy as the main character.
Older people in anime.
Yeah, they're aging up with the audience.
Yes, it makes you feel like they understand that, it's not just kids and teenagers watching anime. Maybe y'all biggest audience is most likely probably adult men, like low key.
It keeps the dream alive. You're like, maybe I can still get isekai'd. Maybe it can still happen.
I still might get a Digimon partner. It could happen.
It's not too late.
I didn't age out of it. You know what I mean?
Maybe Vmon's just waiting for me, man.
He's waiting.
But my next question is, what emotion do you find hard to?
Ooh, man. All right. I've never gotten asked that one before. That's a good question. Emotion that's hard to portray. I know, right? Because like as an actor, if you admit to you struggling something, like, oh, he can't act.
We're gonna tell everyone. So
yeah.
Make up something good.
Ennui. I think the thing that is hardest for me to portray is, and this is more on the commercial side because I do a lot of commercial work. We get this all the time. Conversational. How do you make yourself sound like you're just talking to your buddy? You got to take all of the hills and the valleys. And even in my actual normal personal speech, I'm someone that speaks with like a presentation. There's ups and there's downs and there's lefts and there's rights. I'm not just flat and talking to people like this all the time. But when you're doing a lot of commercials, like that's the read. The read is flat. There's no ups and downs. It's direct and just like this. So that to me is something that I really struggle with because that's actually not how I normally speak. Whereas there's a lot of folks like you walk down the street and you talk to, that is actually how they talk. So for me, what's considered conversational is like actually the inverse of how I have conversations. And so that's something that I really struggle with. Then on the flip side of that, when I go in and do anime, like if I was doing something big, like a one-off in a show, like playing some giant character or some big monster or something, that's really easy for me because it's easy to go over the top and big. It's the like taking it all down and just being down here and acting like you really don't care about what you're doing. That part is like so difficult for me.
Like, why are you so excited to get stabbed 19 times?
Yeah,
I want to be in anime.
I'm pumped. I'm happy to be here.
I feel like I've gotten so many different answers for this question, from trying to cry to laughing and everything. So to hear
that stuff's easy.
Like what'd you say? Controversial, not conversation.
Yeah,
like,
conversational.
If that's just like the direction they're giving you, I wouldn't know what to do. Like we want it to be more conversation.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, because it's like
for my podcast, man. I have 197 episodes.
Yeah, because that means different things to different people. Conversational means it could just mean anything, So you're like, but what does that sound like to you?
So before I ask this next question, I just want to point out that Raysean wrote all of these. What is your social security number?
Social security number is 919
555. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to? It doesn't have to be someone by name, but that's been a good support system for you, and how have they helped you out, and why do you think that's important?
Oh man, woo, that list is long.
You're gonna add some more names to it by the end of this, buddy.
I think that I'm gonna say my fiance.
Okay.
My sweet love of my life, Amy. She's so wonderful. She's currently in vet school right now. She's gonna be helping all the animals, and the fact that she does the work that she does and still has so much like love and time to give to me and my things. Because it's so funny, right? Like, I think actors, we get so caught up in what we're doing. We're like, oh, woe is me. Like, I'm struggling and things are so hard. And so I'd be like, man, I didn't book this thing and I really wanted to book it. And I'm like, so sad. And she's like, I had to euthanize a goat today. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess your job is actually pretty stressful too, huh? And the fact that she still sits there and listens to me like whine and complain and share my grievances about what I'm going through, Meanwhile, like the next day, like she's in class, like in scrubs, like covered in blood, doing surgeries, and she's like, yeah, yep, you're really sad about not booking that role. I'll call you later. We'll be in surgery for the next 6 hours. Bye. So I feel like I couldn't have done this without her, and she's just so wonderful and so amazing. And my soon-to-be in-laws, they're fantastic as well. I do a lot of commuting, and so their door is always open as like, you can always stay with us because they live closer to Crunchyroll than we do. So I'll stay over at their place, or if I need to take a power nap or just grab some snacks or something. And they're just so supportive of my career and everything that I do. And yeah, so I'm marrying into a wonderful support system, and I feel so fortunate for that. And of course I have my own mom who I love dearly. And then folks within the industry, there's been so many actors that have given me little nuggets here and there. And someone who has been a continuing and ongoing supporter in terms of answering questions and being a resource is Lindsay Seidel. She's someone who I will always give tremendous respect to and sing their praises, because when I was completely on the outs, like not even in the industry, not a credit to my name, she was like willing to sit down and answer my questions, willing to sit down and give me advice. And she didn't know like if I was going to turn out to do anything, like, but she still sat down and she talked to me like I was a peer, not just some random fan on the internet that was asking her a bunch of questions. And so I'm always so thankful to Lindsay for that. And I wish her all the best. And I love seeing her prosper because I like to see when good things happen to good people. So yeah, I would say that's my like little support system. And it's much, much wider than that. But that would take 2 hours for me to go through the whole list.
Just email it to us. We'll have someone read it later. Someone on the staff.
Roll the credits at the end of the episode.
You earlier you were mentioning the name Dave. What was his last name, if you mind me asking?
Oh yeah. So Dave Rosenthal is my voice acting coach.
Okay.
So Dave Rosenthal is the CEO of the Global Voice Acting Academy. That's where I did all of my training. That's where I learned the basics of acting. That's where I learned the basics of the voiceover business. And I always recommend folks to go through GVAA if they're like, I don't want to be a voice actor. I direct them there. I know there's lots of different books and online resources, but I feel like in good conscience, I can only speak to the thing that I literally did. I'm not going to recommend something to someone. Like if I didn't literally do it, I don't care how good the reviews are. I don't feel like it's right for me to be like, hey, for your literal career, I want you to just take this thing on faith that I myself didn't do. So that's why I always say GVAA, it's what I did. It's the course that I went through. It's the process that I went through. And the success of it is apparent in the success that I have in my career. If you look at my career and you say, I don't like the way his career turned out, maybe go a different route. If you like how it worked out for me and you're like, I think I might be able to emulate that, then follow the steps. The thing that I love about GVAA is they do a consultation before you put any money down, before you commit anything. They do a consultation to, one, find out if voice acting is actually right for you, if it's something that you even should be doing. And two, to get a gauge of where your talent is. They'll sit down with you, they'll have that consultation. And by the end of it, they might say, hey, we think that there's some potential here, like me, how I sucked at the beginning, right? And Dave was like, hey, man, this is going to be a couple years for you. Like, you ain't got it right now. So it's going to take some time. And there's a lot of places that'll just take your money. They'll just take your money and give you promises and say, oh, yeah, we'll get you out there in a weekend or 6 weeks or a month or whatever it is. Like, no, one of the things that, I sing Dave's praises for is he's very open and honest about when he talks to new people. He's like, for me and Dave is someone with an actual like background in acting. He was like, for me to transition from, on camera work to just doing voice acting, it was 7 years. It was 7 years for him. So this is someone with skills, talent, and ability that was booking. It took him 7 years to live just off of voiceover. And so he tells new students that, like, are you willing to commit 7 years? Are you willing to commit maybe more based on the talent? Maybe a little less if you're a little more talented, but, around 7. And I don't think that there's a lot of places that are being honest with people and saying that, like, being in the lead of the next big anime, being in a Disney movie, 7 years. Are you willing to put in 7 years? And if the answer to that question is no, you might not want to go all in on voice acting. You might want to take it slow. Don't quit your day job, that sort of deal. And so I want to manage expectations and just make sure that people are aware, like, it's a big commitment. It's going to take time. And GVAA, they'll do it the right way. They'll take it slow. They won't rush it. And I don't get paid any extra money to say this. It's just like, this is this is my experience. This is what worked for me. And again, I can only speak to my own authentic experience.
Well, my next question I want to ask you, which anime has had the most significant impact on you and why?
Oh man. Woo-wee. Well, it's going to be a tie. It's going to be a tie because there's two phases of my life. I would say in my younger years, that's probably Digimon. So I've talked about this, publicly before. But the reason why Digimon the movie was so special to me, the Digimon the series, the franchise is special, but the movie specifically is special because that was the first movie that I ever asked my parents, like, hey, can we go see this movie? And they agreed. But then the flip side of that is also one of the last movies that we ever saw as a family. My parents are divorced. They're no longer together. And so for me,
Because
it is. No, not because of the
Jesus, man.
No, not because of the film. Much more personal reasons, deeper, impactful ones. Not like that Reddit story, that you hear of the kids. Their parents got divorced from the Digimon movie. I'm not the Reddit kid, I promise.
Okay.
But yeah,
so.
so for me, it's very impactful in that way because it marks a significant point in my life because this major thing happened. And I think about, childhood. When did my childhood, my illusion of it kind of shift? Well, it was when I got introduced to the reality of discord in a household, when mom and dad aren't getting along. And so, yeah, I would say the Digimon because that was something that I could go to, I could fall back on, something I had to look forward to every Saturday. Maybe when weeks weren't the best, I knew that Digimon was coming on Saturday. So I always had that to look forward to. So I would say younger years, definitely Digimon. And then on the back half of my life, my early 20s, going into now, it would be My Hero Academia. I remember at the time when I saw the very first episode, y'all, I was down bad. Like I told you. I had just graduated and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't know if my degree was the right choice. Cause I went to school out of state. So I'm looking at like $100,000 in debt. Like, oh my gosh, did I just make a huge mistake? And I didn't realize that I might not have job security until I'm a freaking senior in college. Like, what am I going to do? And seeing my heroes, seeing the performances, seeing the characters and falling in love with them. Again, it reinvigorated that childlike spark of hey, why do you have to have a real job? What they would say a traditional job. Why can't you go do something in entertainment and fun? Who cares if it's going to be hard or if it's a 1 in a million chance if it'll even work? Who says you can't do it? Why can't you join this cast of characters and be in this world and live in these scenes and play one of these roles? Who says that you can't do it? And My Hero is so great about pushing home that message of even though you don't have the quirks, you don't have the stats on paper, you don't have the lineage, you don't have the upbringing, you too can still go out and succeed. I mean, the main character Deku is a perfect example of that. On paper, he should have failed by every metric imaginable, right? But we've seen him go on to become this amazing hero despite all of that, through his hard work and persistence and character. And so I think I took a lot from that, and it has lended itself to a successful career in voiceover. So I would say those would be the two for me. It's Digimon in the front half, My Hero Academia in the back half, and I've had the wonderful fortune of being part of both of those series now. So yeah, dream come true.
I have to give you props on My Hero one. That's literally me too. It caught me within the first 2 episodes. I think the scene where you see Deku trying to save Kanchan, to me, is probably one of the best scenes.
Yeah,
out My Hero. That literally caught me into the show. And then the moment where All Might is you can become a hero after telling him he couldn't be a hero.
Yeah,
actually seeing that he actually is brave and is willing to actually go out there and do something. Well, a lot of people who do have powers and stuff like that are making excuses to why they can't do something.
Absolutely.
And he's like, fuck it.
I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna find a way.
So that anime has always made a huge impression on me. As a kid, I'll say not Digimon, but Pokemon, almost for some of the similar reasons, but it was pretty good.
Insulting today, Raysean.
I mean, I gotta be legit to who I was.
Hey, nothing wrong with Pokemon.
I watch Pokemon. All right. For my next question, I want to ask you: has your taste in anime evolved over the years?
Well, I would say no, because I think the first anime that I was introduced to, obviously there's at the time I didn't even know they were anime, but Dragon Ball and Pokemon and Digimon. But at the same time, the other series that I was first introduced to were Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha, like things on Adult Swim, things that I should not have been watching at 6 years old, but I stayed up late and I watched them on Adult Swim. So it's like I got exposed to like Cowboy Bebop. So I watched like the more mature palette and then maybe more of the, I would say like the kid-oriented shows all at the same time. So my, I guess, anime taste was always just broad. I liked it all. I liked the mature stuff. I liked the cartoony stuff. I liked the monster shows. I liked the mecha shows. I love Gundam. And so I think that for me, I wouldn't say it's necessarily evolved because, yeah, I liked it all to begin with. There's not really a genre. Well, that's not true. There are some genres.
You gave me one in the beginning that you don't like.
There are some genres of anime that I don't super tune into, like the sports anime, like I said. And I guess I really don't like super rock with like music stuff. Like that's just never really been a thing. So if it's a show about like a pop idol, like I'm probably not going to tune into that. But most of the other stuff, like I can do slice of life. I like slice of life stuff. But yeah, I have a wide range. And I think the only thing I would say is my taste hasn't necessarily changed, but my appreciation for anime has evolved over the years. Being on the other side of it now, like I appreciate what goes into every step of the process, both overseas and stateside. Like now that I like have been on the other side, like I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of work that goes into making all of this happen, especially now with simuldubs, like getting it the same week, if sometimes the same day. Like, whoa, that's an amazing feat. You've got the folks over in Japan that are sending materials in advance so that we can record them so they can come out. Like that's so amazing. So I've developed such an appreciation for how much love and resources are put into this industry as a whole, because you guys know, like not even 20 years ago, like anime was not necessarily something that kids on the playground were like applauding you for. If you walked into school with like a Dragon Ball shirt, depending on the neighborhood or where you grew up, they're like, oh man, freaking loser. But like now you see people, they sell Dragon Ball shirts at Walmart. But in the 90s, that wasn't really a thing. Like you had to go to the corner stores to get, especially if it was something even more obscure than Dragon Ball, like, a Van Dread or something like that. Like those aren't the kinds of things that you would see getting screen time. And now we're at a place where you got shows like Spy Family, which isn't even like a crazy over the top shonen type of battle anime, but you can get Spy Family merch at Walmart, whereas like that used to be reserved just for Naruto and Dragon Ball and Bleach, but it's like now even shows like that are getting love and appreciation. So I just love how things have evolved. I love that there's an appreciation for the art form and for the medium, and yeah, I'm just all about it.
It's so interesting. Like I think we'd all like to be like, yeah, we've grown up, our tastes have changed, but we're all still watching Dragon Ball.
Yes.
And when they make more Dragon Ball Super, we're all going to be watching more Dragon Ball.
Absolutely.
As much as you can grow and like more stuff, you're always going to love to come back to the basics.
Yeah.
I feel like for me personally, as like a kid, teenager, I've always been more of like your action type of anime. I feel like as I've grown, I've been more able to enjoy your shoujos and other anime that's not particular about action. One of my favorite anime is a music. So when you said that, I was like, oh dang. And then
it's just not my cup of tea.
I feel it. I understand. And then also one of my favorites is a sports anime is in Haikyuu. So it's like, I can understand how some people not like it, and then some people do like it. You know what I mean? Everybody's taste is different, and we all come from different backgrounds to why we like something or not like something.
Yeah, absolutely. So which vocal performance do you consider your best? Do you want me to do this? You got a little emoji there like this.
My top tier. Well, I would say, even though no one's heard it yet, I actually do think my performance as Joe in Digimon the movies is my best performance, by a pretty big margin. I think that when folks hear it, they're going to be very pleased, with what we've put together, not just my performance, but I think the whole cast as a whole. And the wonderful thing is that these movies have been screened already. Like there are folks who have actually seen the films. And so I think that hearing the audience feedback gave me a lot of like, oh, okay, all right, we're safe, So I'm really excited for folks to see that. I think Joe is my best performance. But as far as things that have come out, I would say the thing that I feel like, oh, that was like I did a really good job in that. There was a video game that came out, I want to say last year or maybe a year and a half, Double Dragon Gaiden: Rise of the Dragons. I play a villain in that game. His name is Anubis. He's one of the four like boss characters that you'll fight over the course of the game. And that was the first time that I ever got to like drop down in my register for a character. As I'm sure you guys can hear, my voice is definitely like mid to high range. No one like hears my voice and is like, that's like a booming man baritone. Like that's definitely not, that's not me. But I got to play this character Anubis. And I remember thinking like, I don't know if like I'm going to be able to do this. Cause I'm like, hey guys, it's me. I'm Eli. Like, oh, la, la, la. But to shift from that to praise Anubis, like that was a really exciting time for me. And getting to like just be this like a bad guy, I was like, whoa, I didn't know that I was capable of that. So I was really proud of that role because I got to showcase a skill set in a different part of my range that I didn't necessarily feel the most confident in. And now that I've done that, I feel a lot more confident in that. And so, you know, when I get called in for Walla or bit parts or whatever it is, and I'm like Soldier X or, you know, background male Z, I don't necessarily feel like, okay, I can only go mid range or I can go high. I'm like, I can also go low now. Like, heck yeah, you know, knowing that I can do that, that was really reassuring for me as an actor.
It's like my morals.
Well, my next question I want to ask you, can you offer any advice for any aspiring voice actors out there looking to break into the industry? Could you give them some recommendations for like websites they should look at, educational paths? You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but you feel like you can just kind of give us a brief little summary of it.
Yeah, Spark Notes. So I'll go back to, you know, Global Voice Acting Academy. Again, that's where I did my training. That's where I built my foundation. Everything that I know about acting came through the Global Voice Acting Academy. Obviously, there's been some on-the-job training since then, but as far as the foundation to get in, I would say that's where I would point people. And before you even commit, you know, make sure you do a consultation, sit down, figure out what's right for you before you open the checkbook or the credit card or anything like that, because it is a big commitment. It's not necessarily the cheapest industry to just break into. I tell folks there's lots of different ways to enter the industry. There's lots of different routes you can take. There's no one right way to do it. But just speaking to my own experience, again, just me, it cost me about $5,000 overall to do my career. That was the cost of all of my training. Yep, that's the cost. All of my 2 years of training. That covered the cost of my 2 demos, which were professionally recorded. And that was the cost of website. That's the cost of my microphone, audio interface, the new laptop that I bought. All of that was included in that $5,000. So again, you might not need a new laptop, so you might be able to chop off $1,000 or so, you know, right there. So it might be $4,000 for you. But for me, like that's what it took. And I just want people to be aware that yes, it is possible to make strides in your career with $100 investment, but is it necessarily gonna, you know, translate to a 10-year career where you're gonna be able to use that same $100 investment? Like you're gonna have to expand and upgrade and put a little bit more. You're gonna get out of this what you put into it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying that it's all about how much money you spend on equipment, because that's definitely not what I'm saying. Don't go out and buy a $3,000 microphone when you start. Don't do that. That I would definitely say that is a very good piece of advice. Do not buy a crazy expensive microphone before you have like acoustically treated your space and learn how to use your voice and all of those things. Focus on the training, the being an actor part. That part is the crucial foundation. And I would also encourage people, learn to have a voice that is reliable. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying you got to be a circus monkey. But when someone is asking like, can you do this? Don't hesitate of like, well, actually, I don't know if I can do that. Maybe if I like take a second, if I get it, can I just have a moment to just blurt it out? Even if it's totally wrong, just try it. Just show them that you have the ability to, on a switch, flip and go. And if you go too big, they'll pull you back. If you go too small, they'll pull you out. Just having a voice that is ready to go, you're reliable, you're professional. You know, that's a piece of advice that I actually picked up, not even from voiceover. It was, so this kind of ties into like why I'm like, I wouldn't really watch a musical anime. So my high school doubled as a performing arts academy. So I went to school with like theater kids and singers and dancers. And so for me, I'm kind of just over the whole musical thing because it was basically the background of my entire high school career. Like if you imagine High School Musical, yeah, like but like my actual life was, kids singing and dancing in the hallway. It gets kind of tiring after 4 years. No disrespect to all those Academy kids. But anyway, the piece of advice they were talking about that was singing. They were like, have a voice that's reliable, because you never know if you go to an industry party or an agent or someone and they're like, sing for me right now. This agent was talking about how they'll be like, sing for me right now. And so many people will be like, oh, I gotta warm up. I gotta get some water. And they're like, well, I'm not hiring you. But when they say sing for me right now, and that person, they just start belting out notes. Even if it's not the best, they're like, you got confidence, you're reliable. I'm going to give this person a shot. So I apply that same logic to voiceover. When you're in the booth, when you're in a session, if you're unsure, just go for it, because you can always do a second take.
Do the directors like that?
Yeah, I mean, most of the directors, this is one of the things I've experienced. Very few times, even if I'm talking nail it, like knock it out of the park on the first take, almost every single director is like, okay, all right. But just for variety, let's do a second one. Like, it doesn't matter how perfect your first one is. Unless you're like super crunched for time, they're almost never going to be like, yeah, we'll just move on. Now I will say that the one take that does happen a bit more on the anime side, just because we are a little bit more crunched for time. There's only so much time they can dedicate to you getting your head chopped off, various versions of that. But like on the commercial side, I cannot tell you how many sessions I have sat in that are 4 or 5 hours where we do take after take after take after take after take, 50, 30, 80 takes sometimes. And you're like, wow, I'm giving them a lot of variety. And then you'll hear the finished product and you'll be like, oh, so they used take 2. Cool.
That's funny. And for our last question, I want to ask you, are there any goals or ambitions in voice acting you still hoping to achieve?
Before you answer that, I want to give you a suggestion. And since, you're the big man at Crunchyroll now, you might be able to make this happen. And I know it might seem like the ship has flown because, Yo Son Goku and his friends returns came out 16 years ago. Maybe you could talk to someone and let them know that me and Raysean think you'd be a really good Tarble.
Oh, okay. I like that.
I can feel that.
I don't even remember who did they even dub that? Or was it just Japanese?
It wasn't dubbed. It's not dubbed.
They never dubbed it, man. It was the most insane thing in the world. It's the biggest anime of all time. It has that, and the episode of Bardock and were never dubbed.
Heck yeah. Hey, I mean, I think I could definitely rock that. So hey, Chris, if you're listening, I'm the man. I'm ready. Jump in. Or Damon, whoever's gonna direct it. I want to jump in. Give me the audition.
You can use me and Josh as Walla if you need us.
Yeah, we'll make a Walla group. We'll 4-pack. We'll get one more. Add another buddy. But as far as goals that I have, I think that after I booked Digimon, that really shifted things for me, because I was like, I want to be in this show. I want to do this. I want this. And Digimon was never even like a pie in the sky possibility. Like, yeah, it's cool to say I'd love to be in Digimon, but in my brain I was like, I'm never gonna get the opportunity to audition for that because that ship has long sailed. It's been 20 years. Those characters, those voices, they're not gonna make any more new stuff. With the Adventure cast, what I thought at the time. And then Last Evolution Kizuna came out, and then you had 02 the beginning. So I was wrong, but. I just remember thinking yeah, that's not going to be a thing that ever happens. And so when I got this audition, it was like a dream beyond a dream coming true, because it was I didn't even think that I could do this. And now it's a thing that I'm getting to audition for. And then I actually booked it. Okay, well, I think asking for anything else beyond this would just be greedy. So I think that after I accomplished that, it brought me this level of peace and security. And I think what I was really looking for in the early stages of my career was I wanted validation. I wanted the validation that I belonged, that I could compete at the highest level on big projects and do things that my heroes did. And I've been able to do that now. So I feel pretty content. Everything feels like bonus points. Everything that comes my way feels like just icing on the cake. And it's funny because I'm only, as a professional, I'm only 4 years into my career actually working. So to think that I might have another 20, 30, potentially 40, 50, who knows how long I'm going to be around, years of just additional icing on the cake. Like I feel so spoiled to be in the position that I'm in, to have had the opportunities that I've had so far. And yeah, I would say I'm content, with the one asterisk being, if you ever need to cast a new Zero for a Mega Man game, I would love that audition. Please and thank you. But other than that, totally content.
On a side note, man, I used to hang out with a band from Nashville called the Proto Men, who their whole band. Have you heard of them?
Oh, that's awesome though.
Their whole albums are rock operas about Mega Man.
Oh, I have to look them up. The Proto Mans?
Check them. Yeah, the Proto Men.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty dope. I want to say the fact that you were able to play in something that was like your childhood anime and actually got to see that to fruition. That's pretty cool. For me, that would be Dragon Ball. If I could somehow be able to play in that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would want to be in Daima or if I would want to be in Super. That's just really I don't even know if they're gonna bring Super back. But if they don't, yeah, I will take Daima in a heartbeat. But if they're gonna bring Super back, I think I'd rather go with Super. Only because I've always watched that iteration of Dragon Ball, the longest type thing, and Diamond's just a new type of storyline type of thing. But yeah, I feel you on that. I feel you. Or Pokemon too, but I don't know if I want to play in it now since Ash Ketchum, it's not in his like lifetime anymore.
Oh yeah,
even though
like it was days.
Even though it was in his lifetime for like 20, 30 years, he was starting to feel a little bad. Like, is he gonna win ever? Like, but.
Yeah. But I think the thing with Ash is just like how somehow there's always a new Star Wars side story that's coming out. I think the same thing will happen with Pokemon in, the next decade or so. The Ash spin-off movie, when he went to this secret region that he didn't mention in the main show, and we're going to talk about that now, and we might make it a movie or a whole other series or X, Y, and Z. So I think that they're shelving Ash. I think they're shelving Ash just for a little bit. It's like, when you're young and get into a relationship for the first time and you kind of like got to get some distance and like let things cool down. I think they're doing that sort of deal.
Which would be pretty cool because, I mean, he has been your main face for the longest. It'll be cool to see somebody else try to take up the reins. But it'd be like, do we need another main character? Or like, are we going to follow somebody else's whole journey type of thing, especially when you ain't really ended his journey completely?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's what's making me kind of really want to watch Digimon to see if it has a whole different feel than Pokemon, which as of right now it do, but I just want to see how
night and day sometimes.
Especially when you get past Adventure. Like, Adventure's my favorite by far. But once you get into season 3, it's a totally different feel to it.
Yeah, Tamer's is almost like a horror show in some points.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Ghost Game is absolutely a horror show.
That's true. Ghost Game is like a straight up horror anime.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about before.
Oh, one of the things I was thinking about, because we were like, okay, questions to talk about on the podcast. And this is something I wanted to ask as someone who's like a legitimate fan of the podcasting side, because I listen to all the anime podcasts. I listen to all the interviews, the most obscure ones. I've probably listened to a couple episodes, and because I just always have it on in the background. I love my industry. I love hearing about my peers and their stories and their struggles. So I wanted to ask you if you had to give me not necessarily your favorite, but give me your top 3 most memorable interviews that you have done on your podcast.
Top 3. Okay. Some of them I might talk about might not even have come out yet.
Because I'm going to go listen to them.
I will have to say David Wild. I loved that interview because it was first person I got to talk to that was from the Haikyuu anime. Okay. I thought that was pretty cool, especially to kind of hear his story and everything. I'm trying to think. For my next one, I think his name is Kevin Thurwell.
Oh yeah.
He plays Haruto in this recent isekai anime. I love that interview. I think it's my shorter one out of like all my voice actor interviews, but I thought that was pretty dope. The conversation we had between us, I liked his personality. I felt like we had a similar type of vibe, so I feel like
he's a good dude. He's actually he was our assistant director on Sasaki and Peeps, so I got to work with him quite a bit.
Yeah, he's pretty cool dude. I liked him. And also, it's another interview me and Josh did together with Sean Smith and Andrew Linder when we talked to.
Heck yeah, Andrew the man.
we got to talk to him about Sandland and everything. That interview is probably by far the funniest interview I've done. It's just the way it just all worked together. It was just a good night. That interview just came together. It was a pretty episode.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that because Andrew's someone we started kind of around the same time. And so I've been following his career and, just it's been amazing to watch the success that he's had, especially, I don't know how much he talked about, like, because he's like a dad, he's got like kids and stuff. And I'm like, wow, to be able to, at that point in your life, to be able to go out on a new venture and have the guts, because, me, like I have a fiance, but kids are a whole different like ball game, And if you might mess up your finances, like if the career doesn't shake out, and to like have the confidence to roll those dice when you have a kid, like that's amazing. And so I always sing his praises, and Sandland was huge. I was like, oh my gosh, gonna work on the Akira Toriyama thing, like beast. And especially now that, we've lost Akira Toriyama, getting to essentially work on, his second to last project, like what an honor and an amazing thing that they got to do. So that's awesome. All right. I know I'm going to be listening to tomorrow.
For sure. I'm glad you asked me which ones were my favorite. Haven't been asked that, so that threw me off for a second.
Yeah.
But before we go, I just want to thank you for all the amazing work and for bringing some of our favorite characters to life, and also for coming on.
Hey, pleasure. Absolute pleasure to be here. I had a blast. I love getting to talk about this and talk about anime and just talk with people who are of like minds, because I'm sure you all had that moment at some point in your life where you kind of felt like on the outs with your interest. Yeah. Like maybe your friend group, but you maybe felt like you couldn't talk to your parents about it, or like your teachers or your larger school community or X, Y, and Z. And to be like, now as an adult, I can literally just surround myself with people who also like the same things that I do. And I can actually find people that I can connect with and talk with, especially with the internet and social media. Like it's so easy to find other fans now and cons and all that great stuff. So I'm happy to be part of the community and actually get to share these experiences with other people and not feel like I'm on an island like I did when I was a kid.
I feel you on that. And that wraps up today's episode. I want to extend a big thank you to my guests for joining me and also for sharing some of your great insight. And I had a blast learning, and I hope you listeners did too. Before we sign off, I just want to allow my guests to have a chance to basically tell you guys where you can find them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm real easy to find. So my Instagram and Twitter account is the Eli Farmer. That's the Eli Farmer, or the Eli Farmer if you're fancy. But yeah, so that's me, Instagram, Twitter. And then if you just go to elifarmer.com, you can see my website, demos, or if you're just curious about maybe my credits and my experiences, just Google Eli Farmer. I'm one of one, so it's yeah. I'm the only actor with the name Eli Farmer, surprisingly. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now you plug yourself too, Josh.
Yeah. Find me on Dad's Anime Stash. We will definitely. We are working on new episodes. We've got some coming out soon. We plan on recording this week, and we're actually going to start reviewing Digimon soon.
All right.
That's dope. Then you say we're changing the whole element of your podcast too.
Yeah, what we've
feature
been
more
doing
Digimon.
We've been we have a random wheel, and whatever it lands on, we review, and we're just not getting any luck, and we're starting to be really unhappy. So we're just gonna start reviewing something we like.
All right. Well, now I have another podcast to listen to. Now we're talking.
Yeah. You don't need to work. You just need to listen to podcasts.
Man, I wish I could get paid to just listen to podcasts. Maybe I could be like a podcast reviewer. I could start a YouTube channel where I just review podcasts.
Yeah.
Oh, dang. I might steal that idea.
That might be too meta, because then you're listening to a podcast about someone reviewing a podcast. It's like,
and then you're on there and you're like, today we're going to talk about Raysean Gadson's Anime Podcast, the Eli Farmer episode. It was really good.
And with that, I just want to say, peace.
All right. You want him to...
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.